starting on the first page, do we have any questions we see we want to go over, just refresh? How do we do this, Victoria? Number 3. My numbers up here are different than the ones up here, but say whatever number is on the paper. So 3, and then 5. Okay. Alright, so let's start with 3 and 5. And the questions it's asking is kind of a mixture of all the different topics, not function notation, but domain and range, is it a function or not, zeros and intercepts and stuff like that. So for our domain, are we looking for the x values or y values?
X values.
X values. And because these aren't connected, they're going to be listed in curly brackets, least to greatest, from left to right. So -5 would be the first one. -3 would be the next one. 0, 2, and then 5. Linnea, do you need one of these? You do have it? I think I did. Okay. Just. For range, we are now looking for our y values, lowest to highest. So again, in curly brackets, lowest would be at -3. And then we have 1, 2, and then 3. The lines are not necessary, but if they help you see them, definitely do that. Notice that there are no repeats. We just put it least to greatest with no repeats. And then, is this a function? Are there any multiple x values? Sorry, are there any x values that go to multiple y values? None of the x's repeat to other y values, so this is a function. Okay. Any questions on 3 before we move on to 5? Yes. Just only write it down once. So if the number repeats, only write it down once. But that's for domain, only write it down once, and then range, only write it down once. If the number is in both, make sure you write it in both. For number 5, again, domain is your x value, so we're looking furthest left to furthest right, but remember that arrows means it's going to keep going. So if we're looking at the furthest point to the left, this is going down and left, imagine that. Do we have a furthest point that we know to the left? What about to the right? Do we know what that end point is going to be? No. So if it keeps going left and right, do you remember what that's called? All real numbers. And we write it, curly brackets, x such that x is an element of all real numbers. For our range, we're looking lowest to highest. Do we know what our lowest value is? No. What about our highest? So this would also be all real numbers, except instead of x, you're going to write y. Is this one a function? Does it pass the vertical line test? Yes, this is a function. Now it looks like it might touch more than one, but remember that this keeps going off and left and off and right, so yes, it is. Bless you. Does anyone remember what the word zeros mean? What are they looking for? What are they asking you to find? not both, just one of those. You know which one?
Yeah.
Yeah, x. So you're looking for your x-intercepts when it's asking for zeros. Remember that there are 3 words that are interchangeable with x-intercepts: roots, solutions, zeros. So if it's looking for the x-intercept, it's looking for where does this function cross the x-axis. And we're going to write those as ordered pairs. Where does it? Alex?
-2, 1.
Negative, I think we said those.
Oh, whoops.
Negative
One.
1, and 2. So we write this as negative 1, 0, 1, 0, and 2, 0. Other questions on this page? If not, move on to the next one. Disregard this section I have here. You guys have it. What questions do we have on this page? Matthew?
8 and 10.
7 and 9 are very similar to 8. So once you see those, you'll be able to see how to do those. Cameron?
6.
Sure, we do 6. And then Lily? Okay. So let's start with 6. Domain left to right. This keeps going to the left, but it has an endpoint to the right. So we know it's going to start off x such that. If this keeps going left but has an endpoint, how would we write this? Where does it stop? Furthest point to the right. Cameron? 3. Is it greater than 3 or less than 3? Less than. All of this part of the function is below it. So this would be x is less than or equal to 3. What would our range be? Look at your lowest, look at your highest points. Nature. Mm-hmm. This keeps going down and this keeps going up, so it's going to be all real numbers. Is this a function? No, it does not pass the vertical line test. And then zeros. What are your x-intercepts? Or intercept? Do we have any? Yes? What are they? Or what is it? Which one? At 3. Did we write that as 3, 0? Questions on 6 before we move on? For 8, so this is your function notation that's very similar to evaluating, something we did at the beginning of the year, where you have to know what you're given and what it's asking for. G of negative 3 means that this is your x value. You're given x and you have to find y. They also give you different equations. Because this is G, we're using the G equation. So we would put negative 3 in for all of our x's. And then simplify and figure out what that is. So once you set it up, whether you do that in the calculator or by hand does not matter. Minus 15 negative 6, minus 11. So then your final answer you could write as one of two ways. G of negative 3 equals negative 17, or G of x equals negative 17. Don't have to write both, pick one. Questions on 8 before we go on to 10. Ten is really just doing what we did, but doing it twice for two separate equations. So they're using this f of x for the first part, and then the g of x for the second part. So let's do the first part first. F of negative 1 equals 5 times negative 1 minus 20. Simplify that, figure out what that is. We have negative 5 minus 20, or negative 25. Do that same thing for the other one, for the g of 2. So g of 2 equals 2 squared plus 5 times 2 minus 11. Or 4 plus 10 minus 11. 14 minus 11 is 3. Then the last step would be to add those together. Negative 25 plus 3 would give us negative 22. So that would be our final answer. And writing that, we would just rewrite it with the original. F of negative 1 plus g of 2 equals negative 22. Questions on 10 before we move on to 12. 12 we are going to do in our calculator. Before we do that, reset it. Second plus 712. Go into your y equals, and you're going to type in that equation. I know it's a little blurry. It's x to the 4th. So use your x and then this caret above the division sign. And 4. And then come out of it.
How do you get there again?
X by alpha. This little top hat caret, whatever you want to call it, above the division sign. And then go to the right to come out of it. Minus 8x to the 3rd. Plus 5x squared. Plus 14x. once you have that in your calculator, go ahead and hit graph. And it's going to show you some function. We are looking for the zeros, so your x-intercepts. If it's really easy to see what they are, then you don't need to do anything. Just look at where does it cross the x-axis. It would be at -1, 0, 2, and 7. And then you would write those down. Almost all of the questions that ask to find zeros or y-intercepts can be done in the calculator. But if it says show your work, you will need to show at least your x-intercept work, depending on how it's formatted. Any other questions on this page? If not, go on to the next. Do we have any questions on that page? Nature? 13. Any others? Lily? 16. So with 13, if we're looking for the range, we're looking for our y values. If it helps, underline it. And then find which one matches. For 16, we're also looking for the range. Looking at the answer choices, we can eliminate 2 of them because they have x's. So if we're looking at the lowest to the highest, which of these answers is our correct answer? We have a couple more minutes. Let's see if we can do 1 or 2 problems. On the next page, 19 you won't see on the quiz or on the test, but if you were trying to do that, you could put the x values into the equation and see if you get the y values back, or use your calculator. But do we have questions on 17 or 18? Right, so when we get back from lunch, we'll finish going over this. 20 is very similar to 19, where you could put the x and y values in and figure out which ones match. That one will not be on your quiz or test. Do we have questions on 21 through 26? Ladies, make sure you put your phones out. Nature. 25. Any others on that page? Nature. So let's do 22, 25, and then we'll go on to the, what should be the last page. Alright, so for 22, it gives you an equation that says find h of 3. Did they give you x or did they give you y? They gave us x, we have to find y. So So put 3 into all of your x's. And then simplify. Multiply the 5 and the 3 first. Subtract your 15 and 17. Take the absolute value of -2 to get positive 2. So h of 3 equals 2, or h of x equals 2. Both of those tell you the same thing, the y value. Questions on that one before we do 25? In 25, did they give us our x or y value? X or the y value? I didn't hear what you said. X. Not in this case. Well, yes, okay. They do give us x, but they're saying this is really the y value. So, really they're giving us both, actually, so that was a bad question. Because they're asking which equation should it be, since they give us x and y, we're going to put in x and see if it equals the y. If it doesn't, it's not our answer. You could put all of these in to like your calculator. You could do it algebraically. We're just going to do it algebraically. So for this first one, if we put 2 in, we get 4 plus 8. Would that give us 13? No. Here we have 3 plus 2 squared plus 1. So 3 times 4 plus 1, or 12 plus 1. Would that give us 13? So just seeing which one works. Any other questions on this page? Camera. 24, sure. For 24, are we given our x or our y value? Y. So that means we have to find x. Remember that f of x and y are the same thing, so if you want to replace that with y, you can. Put that y value where y is. And solve for x. So we would subtract 8 on both sides. How would I get rid of the 1/2? Nature. Take it, flip it, multiply it on both sides. Multiply by the reciprocal. So this would give us 4. So C would be our answer. If you mistook this and thought that you were given x instead of y, you would get one of these answers, but it would be the incorrect answer because you'd be solving for the wrong thing. So just be careful there. For questions like 26, because there are 4 domain numbers, you're going to have 4 range numbers. Well, you could have up to 4, I should say, because you're not putting repeats. Make sure that you put each domain number into the function and then find each answer. So after you have it set up, whether you use the calculator or do it by hand, it does not matter. Any other questions on this page? Go on to the last page. Do we have any questions on this page? This one you would put in your calculator. So you would just look at it and see which one isn't up here. So in your calculator, you would put in that whole equation. In y equals, clear it out. X to the third plus 3x squared minus x minus 3. Graph it. And remember that 0 is just for x-intercepts, not y-intercepts. So there is an x-intercept at -2, at -1, and at 1. I'm sorry, I said 2, not 3. So -3, -1, and 1. So the one that is not a 0 is 3.
Alex, I still don't know how to get to that. No, you would graph it.
To the exponent of 3. You see this button right here? So after you hit x, hit that. And it should pop up in the exponent.
This?
Use this for x. Okay. Any other questions on that page? Go ahead and clear off your desk except for your calculator and whatever you're writing with.